My name is Kayleen Dirksen, and I'm the president of the Soul Care Institute. I'd like to introduce you to Jessie Vangsness, who is not yet a student, but will be joining the Soul Care Institute in 2025. And I've asked her to sit down with some of our alumni and current students and ask them what it is like to go through the Soul Care Institute and what she has to look forward to. So that's what you're about to enjoy. Soul Care Institute Reflections with Jessie Vangsness.
Hey friends, welcome back to our Soul Care Institute Reflections series. We are interviewing former students and just getting their perspective on experience through the Soul Care Institute series. Today, I'm so grateful we have a former student. Her name is Robin, formerly Brown, now Craig, and she lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. And she has worked as a program manager through Enlivian, which is formerly the Charlotte Housing Authority. So she works with staff and families and things like that. She is a wife of 10 years, and she has 3 adult children and many grandkids and a couple of great-grandbabies. So life is very full, and we're just so grateful that she is joining us today. Thank you, Robin.
Well, thank you. Yeah, full. That's a mouthful right there. Yeah, my life is quite full, but I'm thankful.
Good, I'm glad. So tell me which cohort you were part of and what was that location and what was the location like?
So, yes, St. Francis Springs Prayer Retreat, cohort 9. Was the cohort that I had the opportunity to join and participate in. It was good. I think for the most part, everyone was well connected. We enjoyed those moments of coming back together because you always have that time between each retreat. St. Francis Springs Prayer Retreat, I loved it because it definitely was a retreat place. I do know that there's a couple of sites that are in places that maybe are not like retreats, but like maybe hotels or not hotels, but anyway, they're not like the retreat center. And I think that's what I really appreciate because there's space there for silence, there's space there for connectivity. I love the fact that, they prefer for you not to have any of your electronics or things during that time. So it is a time to really connect with yourself and with others in a very authentic way. Because now when I see people connecting, it's always through text, email, or even when you're having conversations, there's always a phone up there in front of you at dinner tables, at restaurants. And so I enjoyed the fact that when we came together, we were together. We were together as people, what I think God meant for us to be, communing with one another in laughter and conversation and just getting to learn and know one another. And the strange part about it was even the first time that we came together, it wasn't like you were coming together with strangers, even though a lot of us were strangers. But I think because we were there for the same purpose, that everybody was really warm and giving of themselves. And I think that's what I enjoyed most about the cohort and it being in person, because when we started, there was still a little bit of we were still in the pandemic. So still in that time where people were being very cautious of, wearing the mask and staying your distance and so forth. We were still in that time of life, but yet I think those who maybe thought that they stayed home, and then others that did show up, I think we were comfortable with being in that space with each other.
Yeah. So coming into your first experience with retreat, when you joined your cohort, had you been on any retreats like this before? Silent Solitude, Soul Care?
Yes, actually that year before, and what really brought me, or why I was attracted to Soul Care Institute, I had participated in a mentoring program through our First Lady of our church. She had a program called Authentic Intentional Mentoring. So I spent a year of mentoring with her. Our retreat was at St. Francis. And so I had come to St. Francis. We could not come together. So that started 2019. So at the end of 2020, we were supposed to come to St. Francis Springs prayer retreat for a retreat, and we couldn't because we were in the middle of the pandemic. But I went anyway. It was a time I came into a new job in 2019. And in that, I had 21 direct reports to me, and the pandemic hit. And we are in human services. And so everything changed from meeting with people to virtual. It was a lot of transition. And by the end of 2020, I was feeling very frazzled, broken, tired. So when I came there was and I can't remember her name, I want to say it was Mary, but she told me about the Soul Care Institute. And in her telling me about that, when I went home, I looked it up. I thought, like, wow, this is something I really need, because it was just a 1-year program and it had come to an end, even though we still would meet yearly. But I read about Soul Care, I put in my application. It was supposed to start that following, it's either February or March. I think March was going to be our first meeting with our cohort. But yeah, so I was glad that I went, because that's where I learned about the Soul Care Institute.
That's amazing. So one personal retreat led to learning about the Soul Care Institute. I love that story. So take me into your experience with the retreat focuses. There's 6 of them over 2 years. And each of them you're there like Monday through Thursday. You can stay Thursday night through Friday, right?
Yes.
But each of those had a different feel. Did one in particular stand out as extra helpful for you?
I think because they all had a different theme. I was very open to each one of the themes. I wanted to at least know about them, to see how does this fit, or how does this interweave with what I do on a daily basis. And so I can't say there was one that stood out for me any more than the other than the last one. And I think we have become a community within ourselves. And that last one, it wasn't us saying our goodbyes, but yet we knew we wouldn't be coming back to those same retreats. So I think that one had more of an impact, and not from a learning sense or just from information, but just because, saying goodbye is hard, or saying see you later. And these were people that we've been with over the last 2 years. So that one was a very emotional. Those 2 years went by so quickly. Like, is this our last? Like, we were all in agreement with, like, okay, so when are we all supposed to meet up here again?
So that last one it's integrating the care of your soul into daily life, and that celebrating where everybody had come from, and the journey you guys had been on together. It just sounds like there was so many emotions, knowing people change over 2 years a lot. So tell me a little bit about your listening group.
Yeah. And it ended up just being the 3 of us. We still meet every once in a while now, even though we've been out of the cohort since what we ended up 2022, but we do still communicate with each other. I loved the listening group because ours was very intimate. I think we had the smallest one of our cohort, and so our conversation was very intimate. We trusted, and we still trust one another with your emotions and with your feelings, your thoughts, your families. I know about Beth's family, and I know about Angela's family and they know about mine. A lot of times friendships take place over years. I mean, I still have people I was friends with in school, or, people that you work with closely every day. But this was a relationship that we were able to build on. And yet we only met 3 times a year per coming together. We met every month for our listening group. It's amazing how we bonded and grew together and trusted each other and loved on one another, provided soul care to each other in some good times and some hard times. We still had those things. We still had life, and so it was good to have that support of other people who were on a similar journey of yours looking for soul care. That was really important. And I think that component of soul care definitely was a very intricate piece, that we're trying to make sure that we are taking the best care of who we are from the inside out, and able to share that, I think, just was a piece of the puzzle of soul care that really helped in developing us through that time.
Yeah, I love the way you describe that, just those relationships and the way that you pay close attention to one another. I've heard it said how important witnessing is, and how having empathetic witnesses, people to just watch your life and not give you all the advice, but just mirror what they see in your life. And, as a future student, I'll be joining cohort 15 in a couple of months, and I'm excited at that experience of community and people just witnessing your life and walking this journey together.
Mm-hmm.
And, as much as there's things you learn, it sounds like in the Soul Care Institute, what I'm hearing you say is the people just embody it.
Yes. I could go talk to my friends, but of course they don't, because they're not in it. So having people in it with you, they understood. And so it made it much easier to be able to, as you maybe say, bare your soul, because we were trying to allow our soul to be mended, to hear, to be spoken. You know what I mean? That sometimes people don't get a chance to share or really have people to understand. They just don't understand what you may be going through. And we weren't there to be the yes or the no, just to listen. Because sometimes you have people that you talk, but they don't listen. And so the listening group, I think the most relevant piece of it was that we listened to each other. We didn't always give feedback. We didn't know, there were times that we may, but that was not the premises of why or what we were there for. It was just the opportunity to we weren't trying to fix. We weren't trying to, there was no judgment. It's just the opportunity. I just want to get this out, or I just want to be heard. And that was the space for it. It was a great space for it.
So thankful. Thank you for sharing that. Let's switch gears a little bit. You talked about the afternoons being silence and solitude, and that they would prefer you don't have your electronics and things like that. Tell me what that was like for you, just unplugging and taking that space. Walk me through what that was like for you.
So I'm a nature girl. I love being out in the nature. I love moments of silence. I didn't know. These are all new experiences for me from that year prior to, and then really having the opportunity to practice it, given the space to practice it. Because a lot of times you hear about things and you want to do it, but you never create the space to practice to really see how it feels. So for me, it was opportunity to practice. There were some rhythms that we learned about for soul care. And that's what I love about soul care. There's not a one way to do it. We learned a multitude or a plethora of different rhythms that you could utilize for your own, and then contour to your own soul care, to what works for you. Silence and solitude worked for me. I can't say that maybe it's something that works for everyone, because people share. And even though silence and solitude works for me, it was still a practice, because where I wanted to be silent, my head would have 1,001 things going through it. And then how do I silence this? And this is something that I still practice till today. I have not, by any means, do I have the patent on it. Oh, I got it now. But but I know a place and places that I can go to silence it as much as I can. And I know how to pray for that through meditation and just through different things that I practice, where I can even begin to start with that. So for me, silence and solitude is about getting away. But it definitely is something that I appreciate, I look forward to. I still go to St. Francis Springs Retreat along with other retreat places and embody that practice of silence and solitude, because for me, that's where I'm getting in tune with hearing from God. Silence and solitude has become a rhythm within my life that brings me peace, that brings me joy, that gives me opportunity to hear from God. And I'm not going to say that I hear from God each and every, time, but I'm still creating a place for God to speak to me, whether he chooses to or not. I think it's my duty to care for my soul, to make sure that I create the space for God to be able to do that. And I had the opportunity to do that. I went to walk the El Camino in Santiago, started in St. Jean Pied de Port, 500-mile walk. And again, the silence and solitude many people on the walk, but lots of moments for silence and solitude and community. So yeah, silence and solitude is definitely one that I would tell people, give it an opportunity. Not saying it's always going to be silent, but there's a peace about it that allows you the space for the Holy Spirit and for God to come in, and it gives you space to hear, to really try to silence yourself. And even if you can't silence yourself, just to be still, because God can work those things out through you, but just learning how to be still. Yeah, I feel like I'm home in that space. Yeah, I feel like I'm getting back to the basics in that space of silence and solitude. Yeah.
I love how much you have mentioned the idea of practice and how the Soul Care Institute taught you a life transformed is one that practices maybe new ways of being that aren't natural at one point in your life, and that's how change happens. And you also remind me that part of the Institute, towards the end, give an opportunity to write a rule of life, right? So how was that for you?
It's good for me, because part of my rule of life is to continue this journey of learning. And how do I do that? I've continued on with spiritual formation, spiritual direction, other rhythms that I didn't practice at one point in time, but understanding the need to, because your role of life is, like I said, it's on a trellis and it's taking you places when you kind of understand. For me, it's been very instrumental in not just my day-to-day, helping me to understand where God is trying to take me on this journey and what tools is God using for me to get there, what's working, what's not working. And that's what I like about the rule of life. It can change all the time. Rule doesn't mean that it can't be changed. So we have the opportunity to play with it. Soul care, all these things are so interconnected that they're allowing me to continue the practices and rhythms that I learned. And in your time of the cohort, there's so many different books that you're reading. So I'm getting a chance to go back and reread some of those things and seeing them from a different light, which I just love. So that rule of life continues to keep taking me. I don't know where I'm going yet, but I'm on a journey and I'm enjoying it. Issues or concerns. Soul care.
Okay, so that brings me to one last question. If soul care is an invitation, like in a word or a phrase, what would you say soul care is an invitation into?
It is an invitation into your innermost being, your most important being, and that is God. I mean, it is in God that we move, that we live, and that we have our being. And it is just an invitation into all of that and caring for your soul, because life doesn't. The innermost parts of you that allow you to really express who God intended for us to be. That's what that invitation for me, for soul care. I'm glad we now have these opportunities to look within, because what's in is what comes out.
Who would you say Robin was before the Soul Care Institute, and who is Robin now after graduating?
My life, regardless if I understand it or not, it has meaning and it has purpose. One of those purposes is to care for myself, because in caring for myself, it allows me to care for others. And I can say, prior to, it was probably more about me than it was a lot of other people. And in soul care, even though it's directed inward, the outcome is outward, but it's from the inside out. And I'd say the before Robin was from the outside. But now, looking inside, there's so much more. And until you look in from a way of asking God to help you understand, to know, to really want to care for yourself enough. And in caring for myself, it's not selfish for me to be patient, for me to be kind. It's allowing me to share the fruits of the Spirit of God that is within me. I appreciate the Robin who I've always been, but I never was intentional about knowing. And so you get to know yourself in another way, in a way that God intended for us to know. And I'm still learning. And so soul care just did not stop when those classes, when we stopped the retreats. So it's motivated me. It's taught me some different things that I can use in my day-to-day. It's taught me how to love myself, to know that I am loved. When you still have people who reach out to you from that, you're loved. When you still are able to reach out to other people who are part of that, you know you're loving, you're loving them. So soul care has been an extension into this everyday life that I live in. Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I love that you reminded us all that caring for your soul and getting to know your inner being and the parts of you that God sees, and that process doesn't make you more selfish. It actually helps you to care for others better. And I think that that's the pushback that some people have on soul care or looking at yourself very much, is like it's selfish. But at more people that I meet that do these types of practices and this type of work, it's evident they have hearts that care very well for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and your experiences with the Soul Care Institute. It was a blessing to get to speak with you today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Soul Care Institute Reflections with Jessie Vangsness. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have questions or would just love to talk to someone, please feel free to contact us by going to our website, soulcareinstitute.com. We hope to hear from you.